Welcome to the podcast, Georgia. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. And you're here to chat to us today about your first queer crush.
Yes, I am.
And that experience in high school. Was it in high school?
It was in high school, yeah.
Okay.
It was towards the end. This is the first crush where I had realized that I was into women. There was a couple close friendships that I hadn't identified as crushes previously.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. So this is the first one where I was like, yep, definitely like women. But this was just my first experience.
All right. So what kind of high school did you go to? Like maybe set the scene.
I went to an all-girls school, and it was Uniting Church as well.
Oh, Catholic?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, pretty much the narrative around queerness and stuff was pretty much like, ooh, no, thank you. And there were a couple other like relationships within the year group that it was very high gossip. There was a lot of talking about it, a lot of, just very big drama around that sort of stuff.
There were people in your year who were dating?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But it was pretty much like in secret.
Oh, okay. Because
Yeah.
I went to an all-girls Catholic school. And so, that shocks me because I can't imagine imagine having the courage to do that at a young age. Like, what year was that around?
I remember the first sort of instance of it. It was in year 9.
Okay, that's
and
an
it was
awful
pretty
year to
much,
begin with.
oh my God, I know. And that was when I sort of started thinking like, oh my God, wait a minute. What is this feeling inside me? Why do I want to be her friend? Do I want to kiss her? I don't know. But I remember year 9, it was particularly scandalous. It was 2 of like the more popular girls, and everyone was like, oh my God, well, if they can do it,
Wow.
it seems like okay.
Started a revolution.
I know. I don't think they realized how iconic and impactful that was. But yeah.
So before that, had you already been exploring your sexuality? Like prior to that, were you interested in men, or were you just like, were you somebody who was, oh, I'm not interested at the moment. I'm just going to leave that to the wayside and focus on something else.
So I actually was quite like afraid of like sex and stuff and like ideas around that. I don't know. I think I was just a little bit like kind of
icky.
Yeah. When I was like 12, I remember, oh my God, I remember I was 12 and I was in the locker room and somebody came up to me, literally like 7:30 in the morning to be having this particular conversation. And they were like, hey, I've heard this rumor about you. Somebody said you're queen of the lesbians. And I cried, not because I was like, gay. I was like, oh my God, somebody's thinking about me in that way. No, I'm an innocent little year 7. I'm not doing anything with anyone, let alone the scandal, you know. They were half right though, you know, so I gotta give them credit.
I have the same thing where it was like in year 6, I accidentally fell over and my hat touched this girl's bum. And then she went around and told everyone, she's like, Sasha gropes women's bums, or like things like that. She's a lesbian, blah, blah, blah. And at the time I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, blah, 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 apologizing. It went around for like 6 months, this whole rumor. People, like, she would, if a girl was near me, she'd be like, do you really want to be hanging out with her?
Oh my God.
And so eventually I just got over it. And then it's like, well, you're not too far off. Like, not in horror. Like, it's like, now that I'm older, I'm like, okay.
Literally.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a very similar reaction to if somebody had turned around and gone like, you have a crush on this boy. I'd be like, no, what are you talking about? No. Even if I did have a crush on him. I didn't want people thinking about me in that context.
Yeah. And it's a weird time at that age. I don't think everybody's on the same page yet in terms of sexuality. And I remember, there was that book in the library that everyone would open up and they'd go through and they'd see the naked bodies and this is the man and the women, and they come together and they make the baby, like, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think like I was never really interested in looking at those books. I don't know about you at that age.
No, I think definitely. I think I was just like a little bit like, I don't need to see that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm actually, no, thank you.
So do you know what started you thinking about those things?
So I definitely, even though I was like, sex, I'm 12. Don't talk about that around me.
Yeah.
I was still like, year 8, I'd be walking around Hornsby shops and I'd see a cute boy and be like, oh my God, He looks like Logan Lerman, who I'm obsessed with.
Oh,
White boy of the month, you know, the classic. He ruled for like 3 years. Everyone had him as his desktop background, but
Percy Jackson.
yeah. Oh man, he killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I think it was around year 8 where I would have that similar reaction, but like there's a cute girl in cotton on, and I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why do I like? What is this feeling? This is exclusively reserved for boys. So yeah, I'd say that was sort of when it first started shifting. Yeah.
And when did you feel comfortable? When did you feel ever comfortable talking to somebody about it? Like talking to your friends about it, considering.
Yeah. So I felt particularly comfortable talking to my best friend at the time, who happened to be one of my first confusion crushes. We spent like this year in year 9, pretty much. We hang out all the time. And since then, we basically, like post high school, we were like, yeah, I think I had a crush on you, but I wasn't sure. We had crushes on each other at the same time. Very cute. But yeah, we sort of had those discussions with each other, and I think she was the first person that I was like, I'm a bit confused. I am kind of having this feeling, and she was like, yeah, kind of me too. So we sort of just like eventually like worked through that and like came out to each other. But yeah, we were in this larger group, and I don't think I ever officially told anyone in that group. I kind of just suggested it to like test the waters and see if they were like, ew, what are you talking about? Or like, oh, okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was kind of nerve-wracking, especially being at an all-girls school, because like you were saying, if somebody thinks like, oh my God, she's looking at me, and I've heard that she is into blah, 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 you know? Like, you've got to sort of self-protect in that way.
I really hope that thought doesn't stick around for much longer, because it was so damaging in an all-girls school. That whole thing of like, oh, she likes girls, like stay away. It's just not. It's just not on. Nobody's even thinking about that at that age, and also nobody's thinking about that in those hideous school uniforms.
Oh
like,
my God.
I'm not like, you know what I mean? Like, I just. And it was so damaging for me, particularly through high school, to hear things like that and be like, oh, okay, well, I can't talk about it. Even though around you, like society and the media is encouraging, you know, queer experiences and, you know, getting rid of the heteronormative relationship norm.
Yeah.
You still are in school, and the gossip, it doesn't. You don't feel like you're there yet. You don't feel like you have the space to breathe.
Yeah.
In school.
And like when I did have my first queer crush, and I was like, I really stressed about it. She was in the same drama class as me. And since then I have told her, I was like, you were my first queer crush.
Great. She's
and
not
she
going to
was,
listen to this and be like, it was me.
No, we were actually, I was hanging out with a couple of people on Monday, and I was like, by the way, I'm going on a podcast. I'm going to talk about you.
Okay, cool. So you can talk about them.
Yeah,
I want to ask.
Oh,
who are
yeah,
they?
no, absolutely.
You don't need to name, but like, what are they? What was this person like?
So basically, we were in a play together, and I'd never really like spoken to them properly before, and it wasn't until like I'd gotten to know them that I was like, oh my God, we get along really well. Oh my God, I'm attracted to you. What's happening? Yeah, they were just like this really cool, like kind of quiet, kind of like almost stoic, but just like, yeah, just like this really cool chick. And yeah, it wasn't like we just got along really well. And I think like they got an undercut like a week after I realized I had a crush on them, and I was like, no, this hurts. Oh my God. And I felt like I couldn't tell them because I was like, oh, this might like ruin this like nice little friendship thing we have. And we were in the same drama class. So I was like, I don't want that, you know, in class. Yeah.
And this was year 12?
This was year 12. Yeah.
Right. So you'd come to terms with yourself. You were ready to talk to people about having crushes on somebody if they were the same sex.
So I pretty much, there were these 2 girls that I was friends with that I had told, but I didn't tell anyone that was in my drama class.
Yeah.
They basically figured it out. It wasn't like, there was like a month later when they were like, when are you and blank getting together? And I was like, what? How did you guys know? And they were like, you're so obvious. You'd like stare at them all the time. I had the biggest crush on them. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I'd tell these 2 friends in my group, and I was like, do not tell anyone else. I was still, even in year 12, when I'd come to terms with myself, I was so scared of girls that I sat at lunch with would just turn around and be like, oh, I want her to stay away from me. Even though I was like, I had no reason to think that. They never said anything like homophobic around me. I was still like, you might think that, and that's still a risk.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And you don't want to give them any reason to say something.
Yeah. And of course, when you're in year 12, your lunch group is your lifeline. And if anything happens within that,
Yeah.
like you getting kicked from that group is going to hurt you.
Yeah. God, I feel like we're being such a downer in high school right now.
I know.
I'm trying to say there's hope, there's hope.
Oh, there absolutely is. And there are like beautiful parts about it. But like, yeah, particularly in girls' schools, cliques suck.
Yeah, it really, really, really does.
Yeah.
And so did you ever tell this person?
I did. Yeah.
How did that go?
So it's a funny story, actually. Like a month after the play finished, she and I were doing a group project with a couple people, and we all went out to a cafe to like discuss ideas for this group project. And she and I were walking the same direction afterwards. So we all left, and I was like, oh no, okay. So during this coffee, I remember we were all talking about this crush on a boy that one of my friends had in this group project. And we were like, crushes, they're so annoying. They're so frustrating. They like fill up your whole head and it takes up so much space. And then she said, oh yeah, I had a massive crush on someone during the year 12 play. And I was like, oh my God, like in the play? And she was like, yeah, in the play. So I was like, confirmed. She likes women as well. Sick. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. What if it's me? And I was like, I had a massive crush on someone in the year 12 play as well. She was like, sick. So we were walking home afterwards and I was like, by the way, that was you. And she was like, oh my God, I had a crush on your friend, but that's like really cool. And like, while at the time I was like, oh, awesome. I'm going to go home and just curl up for a little bit. Kind of relieved.
Yeah.
That it was just like a nice little like, oh, that's weird. Get away from me.
Like a weight off your chest.
Yeah.
Like, I always think about that scene in Friends, and this is a hetero relationship, whatever, but it's just a good example when Rachel wants to tell Ross that she likes him or loves him or whatever, and all of her friends are saying, don't do it, you guys have been on and off again, like you're just going to cause more confusion. And she says to them, but people love being told that they're liked.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no, it doesn't matter. And then she eventually tells him, she's like, I love you. And he says, oh, and she says, that's it. That's all I want to say. And he said, well, yeah, I'm in a relationship right now, but it's always nice to know that I'm liked. Like, you know,
God.
And I think that's kind of in that situation. It feels like you're giving somebody a lot of power to hurt you. When you admit something like that.
Yeah. And like, while I was like a little bit like Devo for like a couple days, like next week she was like, let's go get bubble tea. I have a massive crush on this person. I want to talk to you about it. Like, it was just so casual.
Still your friend?
Yeah, we're still friends.
No. As in she still had a crush on your friend?
Different person.
I was like, that's so insensitive.
Oh, yeah, no, that would have been a little bit like, I'm not comfortable talking to you about that, actually.
Yeah.
Talk to someone else about it. No. Like, yeah. You know, we could still talk casually about stuff like that. And she'd like, was still asking for my advice about stuff like that. And we were just comfortable. Yeah. And it felt good to sort of be like, I used to have a crush on you. And that was really cool. And there's no pressure. And we're still friends. And it's all fine.
That was high school. And now you're at university. You've got much wider circles. And you're involved in the arts. So obviously there's a lot of extroversion and people who are very proud and able to communicate, as well as people who are a bit more shy. But how has your relationship with sexuality changed since high school?
I definitely feel a lot more comfortable with it. I think that, like we were saying with high school and cliques, it feels like the world's going to end if you have a falling out with a friend. But like, at uni, you can pretty much like choose who you want to hang out with. And if I were to say to someone like, hey, this is a massive part of who I am, and they were to go, I'm not interested in that at all, you can just say, okay, that's fine. We can go our separate ways. Pretty much everyone that I've met at uni, particularly through the arts, has been super accepting and super open to have conversations about it. So I'd say that my personal relationship with my sexuality and sexuality itself has opened up. And I know there's so much more to explore and so much more to discuss. I've been lucky enough to write essays about like music and sexuality and like history and sexuality through my degree. I just know that there's so much more than putting people in boxes and having certain definitions and just, being able to explore everything and anything about it. Yeah.
The university thing is very interesting because I found that exactly like you said, when I was doing my English degree and we were going back and reading Shakespeare and we were talking about gender genderqueerness and, you know, and flipping the narrative, etc., and going into these old texts where people thought were straighty 180 and they're actually not. And suddenly it kind of, I can't explain how that education, which wasn't a direct, you know, accept everybody, bloody, I love everybody, opened my eyes to just how normal it is and how normal it was that these things happen. You know what I mean? And that you can feel this way. And and I also felt a huge, like, I don't know about you, but do you identify as such, or do you leave it that open?
I identify myself when people ask me as bisexual, but that to me essentially means that I'm interested in people regardless of gender.
Yeah.
And I know there is a massive discussion around, like, say, defining people as bi or pan, because, like, there were, I feel like those particular labels are kind of outdated in the traditional sense, but it's nice, I guess, for me to have something that I can say, this is what I am.
Yeah.
And if people ask for elaboration, I've got a quick little sentence. But I feel like definitions are only necessary if it's useful to the individual.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because when I was reading all this text and stuff in university, suddenly realized that you don't necessarily need to identify. And even if you do identify, that doesn't mean you can't change.
Yeah.
Like, just because you've told one person, oh, I'm straight, doesn't mean that you can't ever not date a woman or anything like that. And that was a big learning curve for me, because I just thought you have to know who you are all the time. Like, you know, when people are like, know who you are, stand for what you believe in. And it's like, I can't change now. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's also definitely something that comes into this, like, narrative of sexuality, where people, like, say one thing and then a couple of years later they're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'm not that, maybe I'm this. There's, like, you almost feel like you're backtracking when you're just absolutely not. Like, change is a massive part of sexuality. That's why they say sexuality is fluid. And
I think it's meant to be fun. Whereas,
exactly.
I feel a burden sometimes where it's like, oh, I've only ever dated men. And so people immediately think I'm straight. My family all think I'm, like, all say, oh, I'm straight. And then it's like, do you bother saying anything to them about your long-term partners, or do you know what I mean? And it's like, is it worth having the conversation? Do I have to do the emotional labor involved in that, like, sit them down, because they probably don't care. So I find that's hard for myself personally. I don't know how you feel, because I think you've spoken so eloquently and so openly with your peers about this. Do you ever feel like that? Do you ever feel like, I don't know if I need to say anything, or should I just let it go, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a case by case.
Yeah.
For me, it was important to let my family know, just because my parents are both slightly more on the conservative side. They're not like Bible bashers, but they weren't exactly overjoyed. And so when I sat them down, I felt like an explanation was needed. And so when I came out to my mum, I kind of tried to frame it as, like, a casual, like, I was at this party and this girl was talking to me and she tried it on, and I just wasn't keen on it because I was secretly dating someone at the time. And she was like, oh, but you would have been interested otherwise? And I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think so. And then she was really quiet for a while, and then we ended up talking about it after that for a little bit, but she just needed that little 2 minutes, just be like, okay, what's actually happening here?
Sure, to, like, reorient herself.
Yeah. And I remember telling my little brothers, they were both pretty much like, I just felt like I needed to explain. But I know that for a lot of people, it's just like, yeah, this actually is a personal thing, and I will tell you when it comes up.
Yeah.
You know, like, the second that I go, I have a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Here she is. By the way, into women. You never had to know that before, but now I guess you do.
Did you speak to your parents in high school about it, or was it
towards the end of year 12?
Right.
Yeah. So I actually spoke to my dad in first year, and it was after the plebiscite. And so we're having a discussion around the plebiscite, and I was like, by the way, this is why I voted for it. And he was like, oh. So yeah, it was a good, like, kind of natural way for it to come up.
Yeah. But I think do it in your own time is probably,
definitely.
Like, it sounds like what you've done is you've you've picked a moment that you feel comfortable opening up
Yeah.
to both your parents about it. You
Yeah.
know, and rather than feeling rushed to sit them both down at the same time and say,
Yeah.
here's the go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was after a couple of years of sitting in that decision and that process of figuring out what I identified as before I sat them down.
Yeah.
Like that was year 12. I started sort of thinking about that in year 9, figuring out who I was around then, and then taking those like 3 years to just be like, cool, what am I doing, before I sat them down. And I sat them down separately because they were two completely different
Conversations.
Yeah.
They're two different people. They're two different.
Exactly. Yeah. There's not just like a parent blueprint, like how to come out to your parents, you know, they're two different people, two different histories. Yeah. It's very important, at least for me, to have those like lowercase p properly.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for little Georgia when she was in high school, or for anybody who is uncertain and a bit afraid of that uncertainty or anxious about that uncertainty? Do you have any advice for those people?
Yeah. I think what I'd say to little Georgia and anyone that is feeling a similar way to how little Georgia was feeling is that no matter what happens, whoever is right for you to be around will stick around no matter what you tell them. And if you say, hey, this is a really important part of myself, and they are really important to you, they will stick around, they will stick by your side. And just, I would say, wait till you're ready. I feel like there's a lot of pressure, at least in like contemporary discourse, to like be out and loud and proud. But like, if you're not ready for that yet, you can sit and wait and everything is going to be okay. Just take the time to figure yourself out, get to know yourself, and tell whoever's important to you whenever you feel like you're ready. Yeah. Basically, bottom line is everything's going to be okay. And you got to love yourself because you're very special and important. Yes.
Thank you so much for coming, Georgia. I think
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.